Hello. Today marks 57 years since Guyana became an independent nation. 57 years is not a very long time in the life of a nation. But for Guyana and countries like Guyana, which became independent after the Second World War, 57 years is a long time. It's a long time because our independence at the time we became independent meant that we were tasked with doing several things at the same time. We were tasked with determining what kind of economy we wanted at the time of independence, what kind of political system we wanted at the time of independence. We had challenges. We had the challenge of a multi-ethnic society where people were brought at different times and under different circumstances. What that meant is that there were times when our ethnic groups were in conflict with each other. There were times when we came together. But the suspicion among the groups never abated. As a matter of fact, as we became independent in 1966, we were recovering from 4 years of ethnic strife and ethnic violence. We had the challenge of becoming a nation at a time when the world did not make preparation for us. After the Second World War and the victors of the war got together in Bretton Woods, New Hampshire, to create the New World Order. They were not creating an order for a Guyana. We did not exist. Our brothers and sisters in the Caribbean did not exist. They were creating a Guyana for themselves. They were creating a world order for themselves. And so we became independent in 1966 in a world that was not made for us, that was not crafted for us. Another challenge before us. We became independent in the midst of the Cold War. The Cold War, a product of the very Second World War, when the European nations divided the world ideologically and fought for supremacy within the context of that division. The east of the Iron Curtain, the Soviet Union, the west of the Iron Curtain, Europe and the United States. We became independent and we were caught in the web of that Cold War that divided the world in two. We had the experience of other countries being divided. Korea split into South and North Korea. Germany split into East and West Germany. Vietnam split into North Vietnam and South Vietnam. The Cold War devoured nations, and we became independent in that hostile environment of the Cold War. Another challenge. We became independent in the aftermath of the failure of our Caribbean nation to mold itself into a single entity. Between 1958 and 1962, there was the attempt at the West Indies Federation. Of course, Guyana was not part of that federation because of our ethnic divide, but in spirit, we were part of that federation. That federation floundered in 1962. And the hopes of going to independence as a united West Indian nation were dashed. And so Trinidad and Tobago and Jamaica led the way With their individual independence in 1962, Guyana and Barbados were to follow in 1966 and the others afterwards. We were making the leap from a plantation to a nation. That is what independence meant. How to turn plantations into nations. These outposts were constructed to produce raw materials for the development of others. So independence meant the transformation of plantations into nations, another challenge. And so our independence journey started in the context of monumental challenges. And 57 years later, we are still together as a nation. We have outlived the Cold War. We have outlived the Cold War. We have survived our internal challenges and the external challenges. And we are still together as a nation despite the many attempts to tear us apart. And so we must celebrate that independence. But if we celebrate our independence 57 years later, we must reflect on the quality of our independence, the content of our independence. Here we are 57 years later with the opportunity to erase from our midst some of the great challenges, the challenge of poverty, something that we have never been able to rid ourselves of in 57 years. But today we have the opportunity to rid ourselves of the scourge of poverty. We have more wealth today than we have ever had before, whether it was by design or by happenstance. Guyana stumbled upon oil. It's one of those products that brings with it challenges to our environment, challenges to our environment. It's one of those products that brings with it the scourge of corruption and greed. But it brings with it the potential to free ourselves from those economic challenges that have crippled us from the time of the Middle Passage to the present. It means, therefore, that oil forces us to re-examine our independence project. It forces us to think anew about the independence project. The independence project. It forces us to confront our own demons, which have accompanied us for 57 years. Yes, we must begin to think about locating our independence in a new vision of ourselves. 57 years after independence, we confront a new challenge to our independence. And that challenge comes with the drunkenness that has been visited upon those who have been installed to steer our country in this new and exciting present and future. As we look at the way in which our rulers have ruled in the last 3 years, we cannot help but think that they're beginning to unravel the old independence covenant and to replace it with something that is rancid, that is anti-independence, that is non-transformational. We've always had greed in high places throughout our independence. But on this 57th anniversary, we face a monumental challenge to our very existence as a nation. As a nation. We may survive as a nation state, but as a nation of different nationalities. We face the challenge of exclusion from the independence project. Exclusion at a time when we should be emphasizing the inclusion, the inclusionary aspect of our independence project and our independence journey. We see the specter, and more than the specter, of exclusion. Exclusion on the basis of race and ethnicity. We see more than a creeping visitation of that old obscenity of racial discrimination. It is marked all over the face of our nation, the face of our nation. Yes, we must celebrate our independence journey because we have survived. But we must recommit ourselves to ensuring that those enemies of independence that we thought we had wiped from the canvas of our nation, we must ensure that they do not strengthen their grip on the present. Independence today must be a time of reflection, but a commitment to action. The racial discrimination in our country today, as we celebrate 57 years of independence, is becoming unbearable. The old class discrimination is still there. The poor, poverty still pervades our consciousness. Almost 50% of our people live below the poverty line. Unemployment is still high, still high. Underemployment still adds to the scourge of poverty. We must recommit ourselves to ensuring that class discrimination must go. Gender discrimination continues as our women bear the burden of the economic ills that have accompanied our independence. It is there the women who must head our households and make plenty out of little. It is our women who face the violence of men in their natural habitat. It is our women who must face the violence, the economic violence of the marketplace. The marketplace. It is our women who are tasked with the burden of preparing our children, our young ones, to weather the storm of childhood and youth. Gender discrimination still prevails. Political discrimination, it depends on who has power and who are powerless. In our political equation, a political equation that ensures that those who quote unquote win everything, win control of the state, win control of the government, win control of society. And we've always, in our independence journey, had to fight against those with power who seek to dominate the powerless, the poor and the powerless. To quote from Professor Clive Thomas. But it's so palpable today that with oil, those who hold power are more drunk today than they have ever been over the last 57 years. We must detox them. We must sober them up, and they will not be sober up by nice talks. We must commit ourselves at this independence to sober them up in ways that ensure that they become clean. We have to cleanse them. And so on this 57th Independence anniversary, I want to salute the working people, the salt of the earth, the men, the women, the poor, the powerless, the black and brown sufferers of our land. I salute you because without you, there would be no independence in the first place. I want to say to our government and our opposition and our political parties that you must begin to take your responsibility of leadership much more seriously and not to see it as your personal vocation. That has been one of the scourge of our independence. The government is not your personal property. The state belongs to all of us. We must pledge at this independence to create better conditions that will attract leaders of conscience, leaders as servants of the people. And so on this 57th anniversary, I call upon my country to set our sights towards new pathways, new pathways. Independence is constant, it's a constant. I dare to invoke that word, transformation, transformation. There have been attempts to transform our country, our society in the last 57 years. We have the best chance to transform, not just to reform. We talk all the time of constitutional reform and electoral reform. What we need is more than reform. We need to transform. Transform our attitudes, transform our landscape. Fear, which has accompanied us for the last 57 years, must be banned from our midst. How can a fearful people be a free people? How can a fearful people be a productive people? We must not be fearful to associate with whomever we want to associate with, whichever party we want to associate with. We should not be fearful. Fear is a sin. Fear is a sin. Fear is non-independent. So again, I say happy independence to Guyana. Another year in this journey from plantation to nation. But the next year must be more beautiful than the last year. The coming year must be a year of resolve. Resolve to come together as individual cultural nations, but come together as cultural nations living within the same border. One people, one nation, one destiny must be given meaning beyond platitude. One people, one nation must be grounded in equality, equal justice, equality before the law, equality in and within the economy, equality in all our manifestations, from race to class to gender to region to region. Our independence must mean more than partying, more than jumping and waving. Or we do that as a form of celebration, as we must, because we're human beings. But celebration must be more than just partying. Added to our partying must be a commitment to advancing the independence project. A new covenant is needed. People who are married, they renew their vows. We are married to each other. We are married as different ethnic groups, different cultural groups. In this new era of potential emancipation from want, in this new era, we must renew our independence vow. Take our independence higher and higher to the mountaintop. Take it to the promised land from whence we came. We came from free spaces, whether those spaces were in Africa or India, Madeira, or China, or our native space here. We were free people. So today, I stretch forth my hand to the rest of my comrades, not only in organizations, but in communities, and to say, Guyana must be much more than a place of voters and people to be manipulated. It's an insult to independence to reduce our day-to-day existence to manipulation in pursuit of power. Our independence must mean more than that. So let us celebrate today. Let us thank God. Let us thank the ancestors. And let us, above and beyond all, thank those who made sacrifices along the way. But the responsibility is ours to navigate the present and to lay down new pathways to the future. Love, camaraderie must be our watchwords. Let us cooperate, as we used to sing years ago. Let us cooperate for Guyana. Let us cooperate as equal citizens, deserving of equal treatment. We are the survivors. We are the survivors. And our story of today needs to be another story. Another Guyana is possible. Another Caribbean is possible. Another world is possible. But we have to intentionally intervene to make that possibility more than just words. Words must have meaning beyond the sound. Guyana, Guyana, Guyana the free. Guyana the free must mean Guyana the free space of free peoples. Let us redouble our efforts. Let us recommit ourselves to fight for that freedom. As I say every night, I love you. I love being Guyanese. I love Guyana. I may be a citizen of the world, but I'm a citizen of the world who is a Guyanese. Happy independence.